Welcome to Indiana News Desk. I'm Joe Wren. Indiana lawmakers passed 5 bills during this week's one-day special session. Our State House reporter will join us later to talk about all those measures and what's headed to a summer study committee. But first, the issue that drew the most protests this week was a school takeover bill. It was aimed at the Gary and Muncie school districts, but critics worry it could set a dangerous precedent for how the state handles struggling schools across the state.
You don't have to drive far in Paoli to see the community's pride for its schools. Right in front of the town's offices sits a ram, the high school mascot. But lately, that pride's been overshadowed by constant news about the district's finances.
If things hadn't changed in 19, they couldn't have paid the staff, okay?
Last summer, Casey Brewster, who served as superintendent at the time, resigned. The school board didn't provide many details, except to say Brewster was incompetent in the areas of academic progress and financial management. The district then brought on Gerald Jackson as interim superintendent. He's cut about 10% of the budget in less than a year through a combination of teacher layoffs, buyouts, retirements, and only buying supplies the district absolutely needs.
I have been known all my life to be kind of a tightwad, if you understand what I'm saying.
Jackson says he expects the district's general fund to finally be in the black in the coming months, but there are still questions about the state of its finances. Paoli is among several school districts mentioned at the State House this week that could be put on a watch list as part of a new school takeover bill called House Bill 1315. Like Gary and Muncie, enrollment continues to decline here. Over the past 20 years, the district's lost about 200 students, which is nearly 13% of the student body. And for the past several years, Paoli has received a C on its annual report card from the state.
It's a good school, but when you see that C and everybody around you is a B or an A, where they're going, anymore you can send your child anywhere you want to.
Democrats who spoke against the bill this week warned that school districts like Paoli could be hurt by the bill, because they could be next when it comes to a state takeover. And legislators in communities where that's already happened say they've been shut out of the conversation.
I'm concerned that even when we're showing improvement under our emergency manager, it doesn't seem to matter to the people in the General Assembly. And I think that's a bad sign.
The bill includes several changes in the governing of Muncie and Gary schools that strip the elected school boards of any power. And they say that essentially takes away the community's say in the future of the school districts.
I'm a resident of Gary, citizen, born and raised there, voter, a taxpayer. So I think it's really unfair. I think it's unjust to strip the vote away. I think that if you start stripping votes away of elected officials, you can just come and say, well, you can't elect your mayor.
Under House Bill 1315, a committee will outline factors it will use to analyze the financial condition of school corporations. Districts that appear to be heading toward financial distress could have to come up with a corrective action plan. The state board charged with overseeing those plans will meet behind closed doors when it receives reports on how schools are doing. Members of the Republican supermajority who pushed the measure through say it will prevent more school corporations from ending up like Gary or Muncie.
It's a good bill. We're doing the right thing. $17 million really misused in Gary schools, and we've not been paying our bills, or Gary's not been paying their bills up there. And all of us, students across the state, have been paying those bills.
Jackson says he doesn't think the takeover bill is bad. In fact, he thinks it's good the state could be keeping a more watchful eye on what's happening to struggling districts like Paoli.
They need to watch what's going on. And I know people talk about Big Brother watching you. I read 1984 when I was a child, okay? But in this business, the school board is in control. They really are. But sometimes, things can get out of control pretty quick.
He's hopeful the cuts he's made and the efforts teachers are making will be enough to keep Paoli off any bad list. But it's a situation that will soon be out of his control. A new superintendent starts June 1st.
He hasn't been a superintendent, but he's been a business manager for a good long while, okay? And he's handled the budget where he's been. And I think he'll be fine.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Barbara Brozier.
Steve Hinnefeld, an education blogger, joins us to talk a little more about these school turnovers and what they mean. Thanks so much for joining us, Steve. So as part of this bill, Muncie community schools will be exempt from some of the state accountability standards. So what does that mean for the district?
Well, a really striking part about this legislation is that I think people didn't see this coming, that it exempts Muncie community schools from the state law that requires schools to get letter grades for based on their academic performance. And it also exempts the district from the law that says what will happen if they get poor grades for multiple years, a potential state intervention and assistance and that sort of thing. They will still get grades because of Indiana's plan to comply with the federal education law called ESSA that requires schools to receive grades, but it will be a different kind of process, and a lot of things are kind of up in the air.
So a lot of the folks in Gary, they kind of felt left out, I think, of this, about the conversation about their schools. So is there a voice for these people now that the state has kind of stripped some of the power from the school boards?
That's an interesting question. The Gary School Board will go from being a school board to an advisory board with really no power, no authority at all. Not that it had lost considerable authority with the sort of partial state takeover by the Distressed Unit Appeals Board and an emergency manager running the schools. But the Gary School Board will be moved further into the background. The citizens of Gary don't seem to have any direct vote through any direct say through their votes in how the local schools are going to be run. It's kind of become a state decision rather than a local decision.
Just quick question, several organizations are also concerned about the lack of some of the public information. What are their concerns?
Well, I think the big concern about public information has to do with this part of the bill that sets up a procedure for schools being placed on a watch list that indicates they're at risk of being kind of financially distressed. And a lot of part of that procedure will be done behind closed doors. Some of the communications and documents will not be public records that have to be disclosed. Meetings will take place in executive session. So the public won't see what's going on in terms of evaluating those schools until it's done.
All right. Steve, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.